Along with Larry Collins and Auntie Wontor, Kyle Dennis is a part of News 2's weekend team, forecasting the weather for the Lowcountry on Saturdays and Sundays. I had a chance to talk with him for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. Kyle, we were just talking about this a few seconds ago, but I want to take you back down memory lane with me to October 2011. I was working at Kaminsky's on the market, which I still do, and here comes Rob Fowler, the news director, Scott Flanagan, and this unknown person. And I'm thinking, who's this guy? And it was you.
And yeah, there I was, dealing with visiting Charleston for the first time, just overwhelmed with everything, in a good way, because, I mean, I'd heard such great things about Charleston, for such a long time. And this was my first day in downtown Charleston, taking in all the sights, seeing all of the great things that I've heard about, the Battery, the Market, King Street, and then there you were on Market Street. And you were one of the first people that I remember meeting.
Thank you.
And I'd heard, that there are great people down here, the people are so nice. You're the first person that I met. I'm like, hey, it's true, there are great people here.
Thank you, I really appreciate that. And speaking of 2011, you have been here since that time here in Charleston. Tell me, how do you like Charleston so far?
I am absolutely in heaven here. I grew up on the East Coast, outside of Philadelphia. I was always a big beach person. I grew up going to the Jersey Shore, not that Jersey Shore. That's North Jersey. No, I was south of Atlantic City. That's a whole different thing. I was at the Philly part of the Jersey Shore. That Jersey Shore is the New York Jersey Shore. But anyway, I was always a big beach person. As far as where I would go as far as my vacations growing up, I'd only make it about as far south as Ocean City, Maryland. But I always heard that the Carolinas were amazing, and especially Charleston.
Yes.
And the first time I really remember seeing Charleston and thinking, that's a place that I want to go to, believe it or not, was on an episode of Throwdown with Bobby Flay.
Wow.
He took on the coconut cake.
Yes.
That's right, it was on Market Street.
Grill.
And I remember seeing the scenery and thinking, wow, that looks amazing. That really does look like it does look like it lives up to the hype.
Yes.
So when I saw there was an opportunity to come here, I jumped at it.
And you have been here at Channel 2 as the weekend evening meteorologist, and now...
It's interesting.
Yes.
It really wasn't until we launched traffic here in the morning, or launched our in-house traffic, that I really started to get into a more typical schedule. And not typical in the sense of 9 to 5, but my schedule before was kind of all over the place. It was... During the week, I would do some reporting. I would be filling in for weather.
Sure.
Now it's getting a little bit more consistent, but it's consistently inconsistent.
I was going to say.
Because I come in about 4 o'clock in the morning. I work until 8. I go home. I take a little nap.
Yeah.
I come back in at 4 in the evening and work until 6. So the hours are difficult. But if I didn't love what I was doing, I would probably have a problem with the hours, but I love what I'm doing.
Yes.
So I never complain about the hours. And the split shift that I do is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The weekend, I do weather, so it's a little bit more laid back. I come in the evening, I work more of a normal shift, but I love what I'm doing, so I'll work any hour of the day, and I have, so.
Yes. And before coming to Channel 2 in the Lowcountry, I actually read that you worked for the Midwest News Network for 2 years. Forecasting weather for most of the country, that is.
Yeah, that was a very unusual job. It was independent news network.
Yeah.
I was doing weather in Gainesville, Florida, Reno, Nevada, Fort Collins, Colorado. I mean, you name it. We were in all areas of the country. So basically what would happen, Quintin, is small market stations that maybe couldn't afford to do their own newscast could outsource to INN, the company that I worked for. And they did the newscast remotely from Davenport, Iowa. So it was the whole newscast, weather, sports, and we did that from Davenport, but we aired in all these different local cities, kind of making it look like the local newscast in that city. So people would see me come on, it would be like watching Rob Fowler or Josh Marthers.
Yeah.
I was in Columbus, Georgia. Wasn't there really, but with technology, we can forecast weather all over the globe. So that was a challenge, to forecast weather in so many different cities, 5, 6 different cities a day. It was crazy, but it was a great experience.
Kind of like AccuWeather.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah. And even before Kyle Dennis, the weathercaster, it was Kyle Dennis, the student.
That's right.
Yeah. Talk to me about your time at Millersville University in Pennsylvania.
Well, even before Millersville, I already knew that I was going to be a meteorologist. I knew that since I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And in high school, I started typing up forecast discussions in the morning.
Is that right?
I would print them out, I'd run off 200-300 copies at the library, and I'd pass them out in the hall.
Wow.
So they said, hey, you know what, we want you to do the weather on our morning announcements.
Yes.
So we started doing weather on the morning announcements, and I started this tradition. They're still doing it at my high school now because of that. And that led to Millersville. So then I went to Millersville University. I got my Bachelor of Science there. And I didn't know that I was going to go into TV. I just knew that I was going to study the weather. And I knew that I wanted to forecast the weather. And
Yes.
TV was a way for me to do that.
And speaking of which, you actually received an Emmy for your online video webcasts.
That's right. I started out, my first real broadcast experience at Millersville was these streaming web videos that we would do.
Okay.
And you mentioned AccuWeather before.
Sure.
They have videos on their website, which is the same format where they kind of sit and use this screenwriter. They pop the graphics up. They can draw on the maps. It's more of a academic, I guess, style broadcast
Yes.
than what you see on a typical newscast. And yeah, in my second year doing that, I won the Emmy for Best Streaming Webcast for the weather.
And when you heard that, what were the first thoughts going to your mind?
I never thought I'd win an Emmy, but it wasn't a real Emmy. It was just the Emmy. But you know what? I'll take it. It's an Emmy.
Yes, yes, yeah. And you know, speaking of weather, you actually grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs. Talk to me about growing up in a big city atmosphere.
I'm definitely a city guy. I've lived in the Midwest, so I've lived in the country too, but I always feel at home in the city. I have relatives in New York.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time there as a kid too. And I feel like I get my personality from the city and the city environment. And growing up watching the stations in Philadelphia, I feel like I really got exposed to some of the best talent in the country. And it was the meteorologists in Philadelphia that really inspired me
Really?
to want to do this. Yeah.
Well, fill in the blanks for me. Being a pianist
It's, I mean, that was my first love even before weather. I knew by probably 6 or 7, like I said, maybe 5, I was going to be a meteorologist, but music was there even before that, I think. It was never something I wanted to do as a career,
Okay.
But I was always musical, and I started taking piano lessons, I think, right before I started kindergarten. And I'm still playing. I played my first wedding when I was in 6th grade.
Talk to me about that.
I had played, I'm trying to think if that was my first gig. I think I played a Christmas party, and I used to play like in the piano in the school plays, and I played for the choir. But then a teacher that I had had in elementary school, after I had left the elementary school, asked me to play at her wedding. And that was an honor, I mean, especially at that age.
Yes.
I never thought I'd be playing a wedding. Even back then, I never thought I'd be asked to play a wedding at that age, but I mean, that was pretty amazing.
And performing on stage with Barry Manilow, how was that?
Oh, man. I mean, sometimes people laugh when I say that I'm a big Barry Manilow fan, but it's
Yes.
true. My dad was actually a big fan, and he would show me his videos when I was growing up. And one of my teachers for the piano, I really believe was Barry, because I would watch him play, then I'd run to my piano and try to copy him. And one time I was in Las Vegas, and he was performing at the Hilton. And he said, does anyone want to ask a question? So I raised my hand, and sure enough, he called on me. And he said, are you a musician? Because I think it probably surprised him that at that point I was 18-year-old guy was in his audience. And
Yes.
I said, yeah. And he said, oh, why don't you come up and play something? And I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been like nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah. Somehow I made it through it though.
Yeah. Well, you know, tell me this. The weather right now is?
The weather right now, well, this week, I mean, crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Up and down.
Yeah, I mean, the weather's fascinating. It can change so quickly, and there's never a dull moment. Even if there's nothing happening here, I mean, watching what happened in Oklahoma this week, I mean, it's just, I mean, as fascinating as it is to follow the science of it, it can also be heartbreaking too. But, I mean, I grew up living through 2 big blizzards on the East Coast, the blizzard of '93 and the blizzard of '96.
Yeah.
And those 2 storms were when I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Channel 2 is?
Hectic.
Yes.
I don't mean that in a bad way. But, you know, we get a lot done with very little sometimes. Sometimes we're short on staffing, or we're short on cameras, or we're short on lots of things, and we make a lot happen. And I'm working with an amazing group of people that every day I'm impressed to see what we pull off.
Kyle Dennis's.
Quiet, observant.
Yes. You know, we know that you love, playing the piano and you love the weather, but when these lights dim each weekend, who was really Kyle Dennis?
You know, what you see is what you get. I never try to be a different person on TV than I really am. I just like to have a good time. I like to spend time with my friends. I like to go out for a good meal. I think Larry told you when you talked to him that we're the two resident foodies here at News 2. Yeah, I mean, that's it. My life really is weather and music.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really all I do.
Well, let's talk about your future. Put on your thinking hat for me. And tell me, what do you see in your future?
I see the beach in my future.
Really?
I just love being at the beach. I've always wanted to live by the water. I grew up about an hour and a half from it.
Yes.
I'm just so happy to be here right now. I'm still not even over Charleston at this point.
That is good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle Dennis, was so great talking to you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I've arrived now. I've
You
made it
have.
onto a Quintin's close-up.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It was an honor.